The morning sun barely broke through the smog that hung over downtown Atlanta. It was one of those restless mornings when everything seemed to move too fast for people who already felt too late. Horns blared, phones rang, and deadlines chased the air like invisible wolves. But for Marcus Reed, time moved differently. He wasn't in a rush. He never was. Soft-spoken black mechanic in his mid-30s, Marcus worked the night shift at a small auto garage, tucked between a laundromat and a fried chicken joint. His hands were always covered in grease, but his heart, steady and patient, stayed clean. He believed the world still ran on kindness, even if people forgot how to notice it. That morning, after clocking out from another long, oil-soaked shift, Marcus started his slow walk home. The day was already heating up. He slung his worn-out backpack over one shoulder and crossed under the bridge near the expressway, humming a little gospel tune his mother used to sing. Then he heard it, the sputter of an engine giving its last breath, followed by a sharp cry of frustration. Marcus turned toward the sound. About 50 feet ahead, a white Mercedes-Benz sat half-parked on the shoulder, hood steaming like a boiling kettle. Beside it stood a woman in a navy blue suit and high heels, pacing and shouting into her phone. "Are you kidding me? You said 10 minutes, it's been 30. She snapped, her voice echoing against the concrete. Marcus hesitated for a moment. Most people didn't want help from strangers anymore, especially someone who looked like him, a tall, tired black man in oil-stained overalls. But then he saw her kick the car tire in frustration, and his instinct won over his doubt. He approached slowly, keeping a respectful distance. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said in his calm, low voice. "Looks like you're having some trouble. Need a hand?" The woman turned, startled. Her expression flickered from caution to relief, and then back to caution again. She clutched her handbag tighter. "I'm fine," she stammered. "The tow truck's on the way," Marcus nodded, unfazed. "All right. Just thought I'd offer. I work at Johnson's garage down on Maple. Sounds like maybe a loose fuse or a dead battery cable." The woman sighed, glancing at her watch. "Battery cable? Can you really tell that just from listening?" He smiled faintly. "Cars talk if you listen long enough." For a moment, the noise of traffic filled the awkward silence between them. She looked at her phone again. The tow company had texted, "Arrival estimate, 55 minutes. She groaned. "You know what?" she muttered, rubbing her temples. "If you really think you can fix it, be my guest. I can't afford to be late again." Marcus stepped closer, popping the hood with practiced ease. The smell of burnt plastic and metal hit him immediately. "Ah," he said, almost to himself. "Loose terminal and a blown fuse. Simple fix." He reached into his backpack, pulling out a small wrench set wrapped in an old bandana. "Won't take long." The woman watched him work, swift, focused, sure-handed. She noticed how gentle he was with every bolt, every wire, as if the car was alive and he didn't want to hurt it. "You do this for a living?" she asked, curiosity replacing her suspicion. "Yes, ma'am," he replied. "Been working on engines since I was 16. My dad used to say cars are like people. You take care of the little things before they break down completely." She gave a short laugh. "That's good advice. I should apply that to my employees." "Employees?" he repeated. "I'm the CEO of Carvertech Industries," she said matter-of-factly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We make smart sensors for electric vehicles." "So this," she gestured to her smoking Mercedes, "is ironic," Marcus chuckled. "Even the smart ones need help sometimes." 5 minutes later, the engine hummed back to life, smooth and steady as if nothing had happened. The woman blinked, astonished. "You fixed it? Just like that?" Marcus wiped his hands on a rag. "Just a loose connection." "Happens more than you'd think," she exhaled in relief, shoulders finally relaxing. "You just saved my morning. Thank you. What did you say your name was?" "Marcus," he said simply, closing the hood. "Marcus Reed." "Well, Marcus Reed," she said, pulling a sleek leather wallet from her purse. "At least let me pay you for your time." Marcus held up a hand, stepping back. "No need for that, ma'am. Just promise me something instead." Her brows furrowed. "Promise you what?" "That someday," he said, meeting her eyes, "you'll help someone who can't pay you back." For a moment, she just stared at him, this stranger who had fixed her luxury car with nothing but kindness and a few worn tools. "People didn't talk like that anymore. That's quite a request," she said softly. Marcus smiled, the kind that came from deep inside, honest and unforced. It's worth more than cash, trust me. Before she could argue, he slung his backpack over his shoulder and started walking away. Wait, she called after him. At least tell me how to reach you, maybe my company could. He turned and waved without stopping. You already know how, he said. Just keep that promise. The Mercedes purred quietly behind him as he disappeared down the overpass, blending back into the rhythm of the city. Elaine Carter, CEO, perfectionist and pragmatist, stood there in silence, staring at the spot where he'd vanished. For some reason she couldn't explain, her heart felt heavier than before, and lighter at the same time. She got back into her car, gripping the steering wheel, and whispered under her breath, "Help someone who can't pay you back." She didn't know it yet, but those words would soon change everything. A week had passed since the breakdown on the expressway, yet Elaine Carter still couldn't get that moment out of her head. The gentle steadiness in Marcus's voice, the sincerity in his eyes when he said, "Help someone who can't pay you back." She'd spent years surrounded by people who only helped when there was a contract, a clause, or a camera watching. But Marcus had fixed her car without hesitation, refused money, and walked away like he didn't need to prove anything. And somehow, that unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Carvertech's headquarters sat at the edge of downtown, 40 floors of glass, steel, and relentless ambition. The lobby bustled with suits and tablets, everyone moving too fast to notice the framed motto on the wall. Innovation through efficiency. But Elaine, for the first time, wondered if she'd been chasing the wrong kind of efficiency all along. That Monday morning, she faced her board in the executive meeting room, a circle of polished walnut and sharper personalities. "We're over budget on the expansion project," said Paul Green, her CFO. "Cutting community partnerships and reducing staff over time could save us 12% this quarter." Elaine nodded mechanically. "And the human cost?" Paul frowned. "It's business, Elaine. We can't sponsor charity work when profits are on the line. Help someone who can't pay you back." Marcus's words echoed again, like a whisper in the sterile boardroom. After the meeting, she sat alone in her office, the city skyline stretching endlessly beyond her windows. She picked up her phone, scrolling to her call history. She hadn't even asked Marcus for his number. He'd just fixed her car and vanished. Something about that bothered her. Not because she wanted to thank him, but because people like him weren't supposed to just disappear. They were supposed to matter. 2 days later, fate decided to step in. Elaine was heading to a mid-morning networking event when her assistant, Janelle, rushed into her office. "There's a man downstairs asking to see you. Says it's about a community partnership proposal." Elaine sighed. "Tell him to email corporate relations." "He already did," Janelle said, hesitating. "But he says he met you before." Elaine's brow furrowed. "Who is it?" Janelle glanced at her tablet. "A Mr. Marcus Reed." Elaine froze. "Send him up." Moments later, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Marcus stepped out. Same calm eyes, same grease-stained hands, though this time he wore a clean button-up shirt tucked neatly into worn jeans. He carried a folder, a notebook, and the same quiet confidence she remembered. "Marcus Reed," she said, half smiling. "You really do appear when engines or CEOs need a tune-up." He chuckled softly. "Guess so, ma'am. Thanks for seeing me." "Of course. What brings you to Carvertech?" He handed her the folder. Inside was a modest proposal, a mechanical training initiative for underprivileged youth, an apprenticeship program that would teach practical automotive and engineering skills. "It's called Project Spark," Marcus explained. "A few of us at the garage mentor local kids on weekends, but we're short on tools and space. I figured if a company like Carvertech supported it, we could reach hundreds more." Elaine skimmed the papers, her heart tightening. The budget was small, laughably small by corporate standards. He wasn't asking for millions, just a partnership and some used equipment. "Marcus, this is thoughtful," she said carefully. "But why come to us?" He looked at her, eyes steady. "Because you're the kind of person who keeps promises." Her breath caught for a moment. "You remembered that?" He smiled. Hard to forget a woman yelling at her Mercedes on the side of a highway. She laughed, genuinely this time. "Touché," he added. You said you'd help someone who couldn't pay you back. This isn't for me, it's for them. She leaned back in her chair, studying him. He wasn't charming her, wasn't performing. Every word came from a place of calm belief. Let me be honest, Elaine said. My board doesn't invest in community projects unless they guarantee publicity or profit. Marcus nodded. Then maybe that's why you should. She blinked, surprised by his boldness. Ma'am, he continued, I've seen how one chance can change a life. I just need one company to care before it's too late for these kids. You don't have to fix everything. Just start the engine. The silence that followed was thick with something she hadn't felt in years. Conviction. Elaine closed the folder slowly. Leave this with me. I'll review it and call you by Friday. Marcus nodded, offering his hand. Thank you for your time. When their hands met, she noticed the small scars along his knuckles. Marks of years spent building, repairing, doing. After he left, Elaine sat motionless for several minutes. She could still hear his words echoing through her mind. Just start the engine. That night at home, she poured herself a glass of wine and stared at her computer screen. The company's profit projections blinked back at her. Numbers, charts, endless data. Then she opened Marcus's proposal again. The simplicity of it disarmed her. No flashy logos, no exaggerated promises. Just heart. The next morning, she brought it up at the executive roundtable. Predictably, the board groaned. We're not a charity, said Paul. This program brings zero ROI. Elaine looked around the table, calm but firm. Not every return shows up on a spreadsheet. For the first time, her team had no immediate response. She smiled faintly to herself. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe kindness was an investment, too. One that paid dividends the world had forgotten how to measure. As she left the meeting, she glanced at her reflection in the glass doors of the elevator. For the first time in a long time, she didn't just see a CEO. She saw a woman who had made a promise, and she was ready to keep it. The boardroom was silent. The kind of silence that follows an unexpected act of courage. For the first time in her 10-year career as CEO, Elaine Carter had gone off script. She had defended a project that didn't promise profits, publicity, or power. Instead, it promised purpose. That was dangerous territory in a world run by numbers. 2 weeks after her first conversation with Marcus Reed, the man who'd fixed her car and somehow managed to rattle her entire worldview, the company's directors were still unconvinced. Elaine, we respect your passion, said Paul Green, her CFO, but Carver Tech can't afford sentimental investments. Our shareholders expect returns, not goodwill. Elaine leaned back in her chair, fingers interlaced. And what do you think builds loyalty, Paul? Press releases or principles? The room shifted uncomfortably. Her marketing head, Tasha, tried to soften the tension. We could make it a PR move, she said. Sponsor Marcus's training center and call it a community outreach initiative. Media will love the CEO meets mechanic angle. Elaine's expression darkened. We're not doing this for headlines. If we help, it has to be genuine. Then you'll be doing it alone, Paul shot back. The words stung, but she didn't flinch. If that's what it takes, she said, standing up. Meeting adjourned. Later that night, Elaine sat in her office long after everyone else had left. The city outside glowed in restless motion. Cars, lights, sirens. It all reminded her of that day on the expressway, when a stranger stopped to help without asking for anything. Now here she was, trying to convince a multi-million-dollar corporation to do the same. Her assistant poked her head in. You're still here? Elaine smiled tiredly. Still here. There's a man waiting in the lobby for you. Says his name's Marcus, Elaine blinked in surprise. At this hour? He said it's important. When she came down, Marcus was sitting quietly near the glass doors, hands folded, a small duffel bag beside him. He stood as soon as he saw her. Marcus, she said, you didn't have to come this late. He shrugged. I figured you might still be working. You look like the kind who forgets to eat dinner, she laughed. You're not wrong. What brings you here? He hesitated, then pulled a small photograph from his pocket, showed a group of teenagers in dirty work clothes grinning beside a half-built go-kart. These are my kids, Marcus said softly. The ones I told you about. I promised them we'd have a real place soon. Somewhere they could learn, somewhere safe. But the landlord just told me he's selling the garage we use. Elaine looked at the photo. The pride in their eyes, the hope. How much time do you have? A week, maybe less. She exhaled, guilt heavy in her chest. Marcus, the board hasn't approved the funding yet. They're not convinced. Marcus smiled sadly. I figured. I didn't come here to beg. Ms. Carter, just thought you should know what's at stake. She looked at him, this man who asked for nothing but a chance to help others, and felt something shift inside her. Marcus, she said, voice steady, I can't make promises tonight, but I can make a move. The next morning, Elaine walked into the weekly investor meeting with a different kind of energy. No slides, no charts, just conviction. I know some of you think this Project Spark idea is a distraction, she began. But let me remind you what Carver Tech was built on. Innovation, yes, but also integrity. We built smart cars to make life better. What's the point if we can't do the same for people? A few investors murmured. Paul looked exasperated. Elaine, idealism doesn't pay salaries. No, she said, leaning forward. But it builds legacies. The words hung there. Simple, heavy, true. Then she added, if we can fund a marketing campaign that costs $500,000 for 1 quarter, we can fund a mechanic training program that changes real lives. Tasha cleared her throat. If it fails? Elaine smiled. Then I'll take the loss personally. That got everyone's attention. The CEO putting her own bonus on the line. That wasn't normal. But Elaine didn't care about normal anymore. 3 days later, she drove herself to the small garage on the west side, the one Marcus used as his weekend classroom. When she pulled up, she saw him surrounded by kids aged 12 to 18, all watching him carefully as he showed them how to replace a brake pad. Always double-check your tools before you start, Marcus said, holding up a wrench. And never rush the job. Patience builds precision. Elaine watched from a distance, unnoticed for a moment. She saw the way those kids looked at him, not just as a teacher, but as proof that someone like them could still make something of themselves. When Marcus finally noticed her, he smiled. Didn't expect to see you here. I needed to see what we're fighting for, she replied. He handed a tool to a boy beside him. Go on, Trey, you got it. The boy tightened a bolt, face glowing with pride. Looks like it's already working, Elaine said quietly. Marcus nodded. Just need the space and tools to keep it going. She looked around the small, dim garage, cracked walls, leaking roof, a single fan trying to cool the summer air. Then she turned back to him. You'll have it, she said. Marcus blinked. You mean? I pushed it through this morning. Carver Tech's sponsoring Project Spark. Equipment, training funds, and a facility lease. It's done. For a moment he just stared at her, speechless. Then a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. Why? He finally asked. Because, Elaine said softly, you reminded me that some engines need heart more than horsepower. That night, as Marcus locked up the garage, he looked up at the faint glow of the city skyline and whispered, Thank you, God. But what he didn't know was that his biggest test, and Elaine's, was still coming. Because when the story hit the media the next week, not everyone saw kindness. Some saw controversy. And soon, both of them would learn that doing the right thing sometimes costs more than anyone expects. The morning sun flooded the Carver Tech courtyard, turning the glass walls gold. Reporters crowded behind velvet ropes, cameras flashing like fireworks. Banners hung from the building's balconies that read, Carver Tech launches Project Spark, building futures. It was the company's biggest event in years, and yet Elaine Carter stood backstage feeling nervous in a way no investor meeting had ever made her. Today wasn't about quarterly growth or stock prices. It was about something real. Beside her, Marcus Reed adjusted the collar of a borrowed blazer, looking completely out of place and perfectly grounded at the same time. You ready? Elaine asked. He smiled. You're the one giving the speech, ma'am. Just fix things, not today, she said. Today you change things. The announcer's voice echoed through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO of Carver Tech Industries, Ms. Elaine Carter. Applause swelled as she walked onto the stage. The courtyard shimmered with flashes from phones and cameras, but her gaze went straight to the front row, the group of kids from Marcus's garage, sitting proudly in their new blue uniforms with Project Spark stitched on the chest. Elaine gripped the podium. "A few months ago, I was stranded on the side of a highway," she began. "My car broke down. I was frustrated, late, and honestly, a little arrogant. But a stranger stopped to help. He didn't ask who I was or what I could pay. He just fixed what was broken." A ripple went through the crowd. Marcus looked down, modest as ever. "That man," Elaine continued, "asked for only one thing in return, that I help someone who couldn't pay me back. Today, we honor that promise." Applause thundered, but Elaine wasn't finished. "This isn't a charity project," she said firmly. "It's an investment in people. In talent we overlook because we measure worth by wealth. These young men and women will become mechanics, engineers, innovators, because one man believed they deserved the tools." She gestured toward Marcus. "Mr. Marcus Reed." The cameras turned to him. For a second, he froze. A lifetime of being unseen suddenly replaced by 1,000 lenses pointed at his face. Elaine extended her hand. "Come on up here." Reluctantly, Marcus climbed the steps, the crowd cheering louder with each one. When he reached her, Elaine handed him the microphone. He looked out at the audience, investors in tailored suits, journalists scribbling notes, kids sitting on the edge of their seats. "I'm not much for speeches," he began, voice low but steady. "But I guess I'll say this. I used to think success was about fixing things that were broken. Engines, machines, even myself. But now I realize it's about helping people keep going when they feel like quitting." He turned slightly toward Elaine. "This lady here kept her word. She didn't just help me, she helped them." He nodded toward the students. "So if you want to know what I asked for in return, it wasn't money. It wasn't fame. It was a chance for others to feel seen the way she saw me." The crowd rose to its feet. Even Paul, the skeptical CFO, clapped until his palms reddened. But amid the applause, Marcus spotted a familiar face, the landlord who'd nearly sold the old garage. The man raised a hand sheepishly. "Heard you bought the building," he shouted. Marcus blinked, turning to Elaine. She grinned. "Carvertech acquired it yesterday. It's yours now, officially the Reed Center for Youth Engineering." The crowd erupted again. Marcus covered his face, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "Then don't," Elaine said gently. "Just keep doing what you do best." After the ceremony, the two stood alone on the rooftop terrace overlooking the city. The noise below faded into distant echoes. "You really didn't have to name the center after me," Marcus said. "I did," Elaine replied, "because names remind us where we came from." He looked at her, thoughtful. "You ever think about that day on the highway?" "Every day," she said. "Funny how the smallest moments change the biggest lives," Marcus chuckled. "Yeah, guess engines aren't the only things that need tune-ups." They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Elaine asked quietly, "Marcus, if you could ask me for anything now, after all this, what would it be?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at the city skyline, the sun dipping low behind the towers, painting everything in gold. Finally, he said, "Just one thing, Ms. Carter. Promise me you won't let this be the last spark." Elaine nodded, emotion thick in her throat. "That's a promise." 1 year later, the Reed Center buzzed with life. Dozens of students worked under the guidance of volunteer engineers. A bright mural on the front wall showed Marcus beside a group of smiling kids. Words beneath it reading, "Kindness is the engine that moves the world." Elaine visited every month, trading her suit jacket for a mechanic's apron. She often found Marcus under a car hood, teaching a boy how to listen to an engine's heartbeat. "Still refusing a paycheck?" she teased one day. He grinned. "Didn't I tell you? The reward's in the sound." "What sound?" He tapped the engine gently as it purred. "The sound of something running right." And sometimes, when the day grew quiet and the last rays of sunlight glowed across the floor, Elaine would stand in the doorway and realize it had all started with a broken car, a stranger's kindness, and 5 simple words: "Help someone who can't pay you back."